Our lead story tonight, the unprecedented protests in China, protests that haven't been seen since the time of Tiananmen Square. What's important this time is how fast the protests spread and how many people were actually out on the streets. So you can see there the huge crowds in different cities, at universities, all holding blank paper as signs of their protest. This comes as a reaction to the draconian COVID curbs and was sparked by the death of people in a lockdown building where they were actually trapped, and many people died in that fire. So the protests from the COVID epicenter Wuhan to clashes in Shanghai, the first direct challenge to Xi's iron fist regime.
The biggest wave of civil disobedience in mainland China since Xi Jinping assumed power a decade ago, as protests over China's draconian zero-COVID policy flare up in several cities. In Beijing, two groups of protesters totaling at least 1,000 people gathered, refusing to disperse, as authorities imposed snap lockdowns, lengthy quarantines, and mass testing campaigns over a handful of COVID cases. In an unusually bold act that appeared to indicate the level of people's desperation, a crowd in Shanghai called for the removal of the Communist Party and Xi Jinping during a standoff with the police, chanting "Xi Jinping, step down." Chinese people usually refrain from criticizing the party and its leaders in public for fear of reprisals. In Wuhan, where the pandemic began 3 years ago, videos on social media showed residents take to the streets, smashing through metal barricades, overturning COVID testing tents, and demanding an end to lockdowns. The Chinese healthcare system is creaking under the mass testing of millions every day, yet experts say lifting restrictions could lead to more than 1 million COVID deaths due to the low vaccination among the elderly. But as China sticks with Xi's zero-COVID policy, even as much of the world has lifted restrictions, Chinese stocks fell sharply as investors raised concerns over the impact of the protests on the world's second-largest economy. The past few days of protests in China over the zero-COVID policy have combined widespread anger over multiple issues in a manner unheard of since Tiananmen Square in 1989. 2 years ago, the zero-COVID policy was successful in preserving the freedom of the majority at the cost of the minority of lockdown cities such as Wuhan. Now the country seems much more united in its suffering. Parmeshwar Bava for NDTV.